And we are live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And before we get into today's matchup of the Detroit Pistons versus the Chicago Bulls, I have a couple things for housekeeping. Episode number 22 came out yesterday on Saturday. We are having some audio issues in our studio, so please beware if you're going to watch it. Please just bear with us as we get through these technical issues. And also, it is a good watch. It's a good topic. We talk about Bojan, if he's going to be a long-term figure for the Detroit Pistons, or if the possibility of him getting shipped off this season to a contending team. So we talk about it. So make sure to watch. Just bear with us with our technical difficulties, and make sure to like and subscribe, because now that the Detroit Pistons season is officially over, we are bringing you more and new content. We will be bringing you NBA 2K content where me and Ryan go head to head, one-on-one, with the Detroit Bad Boys against the current team, all kinds of different mismatches. And then also we will be doing my GM content where we will be doing mock trades and season sim to see what the final record is with these players that we add. And we'll be doing mock drafts, all kinds of fun stuff. So make sure to subscribe and turn on your post notifications, because we have some fun and exciting NBA 2K content coming out very, very soon. Without further ado, let's get into today's recap of the Pistons versus the Chicago Bulls. Tonight's final score was 81-103. This game in the first half was neck and neck through and through. And we really saw some solid defensive possessions from the Detroit Pistons. But early on, the Bulls made their mark. The Bulls started with a 13-4 run in the first quarter. And then Killian Hayes, to go down by one into the second quarter, knocks down a buzzer beater fadeaway jumper. It looked beautiful. Killian Hayes, let's start off with talking with him. Finished with 26 points, 7 assists, 8 rebounds on 8 of 18 shooting, 3 of 8 from the three-point line. Not too shocked with that, but 39 minutes. I mean, he was just an absolute stat sheet stuffer tonight. Let's talk about it, Ryan. What are your thoughts?
So this is back-to-back 20 plus points per game for Killian Hayes, which is amazing. We haven't seen him hit that in a while. And he finished out the season perfectly. Like, this is a great stat line. He did his thing. You saw how confident he was.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing to see out of him. I mean, 39 minutes, that's a lot for somebody, but he handled it like a pro, and we saw that tonight. I'm happy with the 26 and the 8 boards and the 7 assists, and then he also had that 1 block. So he had a great game. I'm not That's something you can hang your hat on. I'm not
Oh, yeah.
disappointed in his season at all. This is a big jump in his career, on the outlook going forward, for sure. I don't think he's definitely not to blame for the loss tonight, or today, I should say, rather. He's not to blame. There really is no blame other than it wasn't our night. Well, wasn't our day.
Right. James Wiseman and Jalen Duren. This was the first game where they were really dominant on the boards. James Wiseman finished with 12 rebounds, Jalen Duren with 18. And, I laughed when I saw his final box score. It's hilarious. I personally, not laughing mockingly, just like, man, Jalen Duren, he's just the man. 4 points, 18 rebounds, 2 of 5 from the field. So obviously, when you're watching the game, he didn't really make a huge effort trying to get some shots up, but he just that inside presence tonight was really felt.
Yeah, his stat line today, I gotta stop saying that. His stat line, who does it remind you of
Who does it remind me of?
out of
I'm not
Pistons history?
sure. Maybe Dennis Rodman.
Yep, that's what I was gonna say.
Okay, I'm glad
That
I guessed it.
reminds me a lot of Dennis's stat line, because he was never the guy to go up there and be an offensive juggernaut. He could get his
Right.
baskets when he wanted to, but he played like Duran did tonight. I said it again. But
We're used to doing recaps
yeah,
like 10:30 at night.
but anyways, Duran, he just he let the game come to him. And that's what he's done all season long. We've seen days or games rather where we've seen him have the double doubles consistently, where he's played great, where he's had offensive opportunities. Today, he only got 5 shots up and made 2 of them. Like, honestly, I'm not complaining because you look at how many rebounds he had and you just see how dominant he was all game long. Like 18 rebounds, like that's not easy. And
No.
and the fact that Wiseman had 12 himself. So the fact that Duren had 18 and Wiseman had 12, and then Killian had 8, Bagley with 7, Jared Rhoden had 6, Corey Joseph 4, Buddy Boeheim 1, Jaden Ivey 3. Like everybody was getting boards tonight and hitting the glass hard. But my big takeaway is the fact that Jalen Duren and James Wiseman on the court together, because we've seen Wiseman struggle on the glass when Duren's been out there.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case today. We saw Duren with 18 boards and Wiseman with 12, and that's great to see, especially when you have Wiseman having a double-double. And actually, that is what? 8 double-doubles in the last 24 games for James Wiseman as a Piston. Like, that's great to see.
Totally. Yeah, I absolutely love James Wiseman's play tonight. 4 of 9 from the field, so he didn't force his shot. He took it when he had the opportunity to. Jaden Ivey tonight, 16 points, finishing off his rookie year, 7 of 20 from the field. So it's not ideal, but he was able to still get 7 buckets on 36 minutes. Jaden Ivey, he had a tough matchup tonight against, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Ayo Dosunmu, some big names in today's NBA. And to see him be able to get 16 on some of the NBA's premiere was really nice to see.
Yeah, I'm not complaining with his stats at all. Because there's a lot of people that would probably complain in the sense of like, where's his 20 points or where's his 7 assists or where's his 6 rebounds that he has been getting consistently every night. That wasn't it's not like you get the same stat line every single night out. And this isn't the case, especially when you're going against top players in the league in DeMar and Zach LaVine. And then Dosunmu is just a great overall young guard. And so it's hard to compete against I would say DeMar is a future Hall of Famer. I wouldn't say Zach LaVine is there yet because he has a lot to do still to get there. But he's just playing against 2 historically good players in the NBA.
Absolutely.
And so when he has that stat line, I'm not complaining at all because DeMar DeRozan is a great defender. He can shut guys down, as can Zach LaVine. So the fact that he still had his 16 points and still took 20 shots, like, I'm not complaining with that at all.
Yeah, and sometimes there's going to be games where you get 20 shots up and they just don't fall. I mean, there's going to be those games when you're a scorer and you're just trying to find your way offensively. There's going to be games where you blank and you put up 20 shots and you got 16 points. And in the end, if you're Jaden, you're just like, all right, we're heading into the summer, 16 points. He had a great 5-6 game stretch here at the end. And it didn't necessarily translate into wins. But for me, just watching Jaden Ivey just start to thrive in the NBA, I just love it. I absolutely just eat it up. Marvin Bagley off the bench, 12 points, 7 rebounds, 5 of 12 from the field, 2 of 4 from the 3-point line on 19 minutes. We've seen him start to kind of make a little bit more of an effort from the 3-point line. Do you see that a little bit more from him this next season, just kind of stretching his game out a bit?
Oh, for sure. I think that's one of the big reasons why he'd even get on the floor. Not saying that he isn't able or capable enough to get on the floor already, but when you add a 3-point shot to your game that is already pretty dominant offensively, that's going to make him even more dominant, and that's going to give him more possibilities and opportunities to get out there and do his thing, especially with a starting lineup of James Wiseman and Jalen Duren. It's going to be harder for him to get out there than to just come off the bench, because I see his role being on the bench going forward, and that's that, and it's probably like 6th, 7th man. I'd put Killian at the 6 rather than Bagley, but that's because Killian's just deserved it all season long. Like, he took that next jump that he needed to get to be that role. But Bagley had a great night. This is what I expect out of him going forward. the
Yeah.
12 points, 7 boards. Like, that's a great stat line to have. And then he also had a steal. And he turned the ball over twice, had 2 fouls, and that's it. I'm not complaining. And actually, I will say our fouls were down tonight. We only had 16, which is great because that's
Oh
way
yeah.
below our max at
Yeah.
22 and a half this season. Like, that's not, it's just, I'm just happy we did not hit 20 fouls. The
I
fact that we
know.
had 16, but we did turn over the ball a lot. So we did hit our average there. But hey, you can't have it both ways. I'll take one of them. But yeah, Bagley going forward, I would like to see this out of him.
It's really unfortunate too because the Pistons tonight, their defense against the Bulls 3-point shooting was very solid. The Bulls finished with 20% from the 3-point line, 6 of 30. So it's unfortunate when you see a statistic like that is just so drastically bad. I mean, 20 is, in those low 20s, that's just not good. It's unfortunate to not see that translate into a win. You really want to see at the end of that four-quarter game, the Pistons on top when the other team's shooting 20%.
Yeah, and like they couldn't shoot the ball tonight, and they had what 42% for field goals, which
Yeah.
isn't great. But we also shot 27% from three, which is not good either. And then we had 36% from the field, which is not good. But we
Yeah.
had 76% from the free throw line, which is decent. They had 77%. So really what it comes down to tonight is that they just outshot us. They had more opportunities. We turned the ball over. That created great looks for them. And if they just flew in that capacity. Like, their entire roster pretty much played today. Only one player did not play, and that was, I believe it was JaMychal Green. But
Yeah.
like, everybody played and everybody scored. There's not one player on their team that did not score today. And like, that's impressive, I will say, because like their bench, like each guy on their bench had at least 8 minutes. That's a lot for
Oh
bench
yeah.
play. So the fact that in their entire team pretty much played the entire game and averaged 8 minutes out there, that's pretty darn good. We can't say the same for us, given the fact that we had multiple injuries, but we still played our entire roster. Jerry Roden had 35 minutes, which is his highest yet. And I mean, I'm not going to complain off of his 7.6 boards because that's actually probably his best stat line this season. And I don't see him necessarily returning next year. It's going to be sad just in the sense that he kind of has a lot of potential still. But I don't see it working out with us.
So with the Pistons having their last game of the season, they wrap up their 17-win, 82-game schedule. And right after the game, it hits social media. Dwayne Casey announces that he will be stepping down from his head coaching position and more than likely we don't know what that position looks like yet, but taking a position in the front office for the Detroit Pistons, more than likely working alongside or underneath Troy Weaver. And there's been a lot of names that have been thrown out as possible candidates. And there has been some extremely interesting ones and some that are reported to be like legit, some that are just getting thrown out there as ideas. But I've seen names from Jerry Stackhouse to Charles Lee to Imaduka to Jay Wright of Villanova. I've seen a lot of fun names, and this is going to be a very interesting process this offseason. Out of some of those names, or maybe possibly some other names, what are the most intriguing ones to you, Ryan?
Well, my takeaway from all those names is all of them are great candidates. They have had success doing what they do best, which is coaching. Not saying that Jerry Stackhouse was a terrible player because he was good,
Oh
but
yeah.
um, out of those names, I don't know if I see one of them being the next Pistons coach. And that's because I think Troy Weaver, I mean, he's a great basketball mind. He's going to do his due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
And what Tim McCormick and Grant Long said post game is something that I agree with. They want a former player and who was younger, and that could be Jerry Stackhouse. But I don't think it necessarily has to be him. I think for us to bring in Jerry Stackhouse, I think I'd like to see it, but I don't think it's the right move because
Yeah.
I think he would need to have coaching experience at the NBA level before making a move to being head coach, because moving from college to the NBA is very hard to do. There's a select few that are able to do it because like we love John Beilein, go blue baby, but
Right.
he was great at Michigan, great at every level of college, transitioned into Cleveland with the NBA, and he got fired in the middle of the season. And there's a
Hmm.
reason for that. It's because you can have success at every single level, but it doesn't matter if it's the NBA or not, because the NBA is very difficult to win at, because now you have to work with different player personalities. And really, like if you're in a LeBron James situation, LeBron's calling the shots pretty much. So
Right.
you really have to have the right mentality with that and actually have experience before actually making the jump in there. So I don't see Jerry Stackhouse. I don't necessarily see I mean, I'd love to see Jay Wright coaching the Pistons, but I agree with Grant Long and Tim McCormick in the sense that we need a young former player to be our next head coach. Because you look at like the Pelicans as an example, Willie Green, Michigan native. He's having a ton of success right
Mhm.
now with the Pelicans, but that's because he's coached at, on a couple panels, meaning like he's been an assistant coach with the Golden State Warriors under Steve Kerr, who is one of the greatest, in my opinion, one of the greater coaches of all time in the NBA. He's not the greatest. Pop is obviously the greatest, but that's just an example, because I want a guy who has experience on these staffs, that's younger and has played, to come in and fill that role. Whereas versus a guy that has coached at college his entire career and has had success there, but it's a big jump. And I said this to you recently. I wouldn't be at all surprised if like a guy like who is currently on our staff in Rashard Lewis takes the helm, because he's a former player. He's young. He's been developing under Dwayne Casey all season long. So he's been learning the ins and the outs and what to do and what not to do. And I'd like to see that as a potential candidate. I'm not saying he's my go-to guy, because there's so many countless others that you could go to. Like you could go with a Rasheed Wallace. Granted, Rasheed hasn't had the coaching experience at the NBA level, but he has been at Memphis with Penny Hardaway. And so like
Right.
he's a Pistons legend, so I wouldn't be surprised if his name popped up. I'm not saying he's the go-to guy either, but my point is in this is that I think we need a young, experienced guy who also played in the NBA, because that'll really connect with our players.
Yeah, and Jay Wright was probably the most intriguing. I don't really see him being the image of the Detroit Pistons and what we're kind of going for. But when I saw him as a possible candidate, I was like, okay, like that's kind of interesting. But when you were talking about having a young coach that's played, I thought of Rashad. I was like, he doesn't give me the head coach like leader mindset, but I would love to maybe hear a couple press conferences from him, or kind of see what maybe he goes on a podcast this summer and gives a little insight on his life. I don't know much about him, so I'd love to learn more, because I'd be very intrigued by that. Jerry Stackhouse, out of all those names that I listed, is probably my most favorited one. I really like Jerry. I think he's got a great presence just at like body language, and he seems like a leader. And I think he's got something good going on at Vanderbilt. I just think he's a little too comfy over there right now. They made a solid run in March Madness, so I just think he's kind of happy there right now. So that's another reason why I don't really see it happening. I think he kind of wants to leave a legacy there. There's the way it seems. But I just don't, they've talked about just because he's on the market like a Steve Nash and blah blah blah. Like I don't want any part of like those guys that have failed on other teams. Like I want a fresh face that we haven't seen before in not necessarily not in the NBA, but I like Mark Jackson, but I don't really want a Mark Jackson. Like I don't know. I think I don't really know what I want, but it's going to be really interesting because Troy Weaver has shown that he can pull anything out of his back pocket. And having a guy like Tom Gores with the owner, and who has a lot of trust in Troy Weaver, I think it's really going to come down to whoever Troy Weaver thinks is best for these guys. I think Jay Wright would definitely be a guy that's leading the charge. If we still had a guy like Sadiq Bey, for example, because Sadiq Bey played with Jay Wright, and I could see Sadiq maybe vouching for him. But it's going to be a very fascinating situation. And I agree. I want somebody that's going to be around for the long haul. When we got Dwayne Casey, we knew he was kind of coming up on, he's not old, but older age, that he, maybe couldn't start a dynasty, but maybe could get the wheels turning. And I want a guy like Chuck Daly that we have around for 10, 12 years. I want this next coach to be our championship coach who's hanging banners in Little Caesars Arena. And that's why I think he has to be young, because it's going to take a couple years to get there. And then once we get there, we don't want a new guy at the helm. We want that guy who brought us here to lead the charge. Any last thoughts about the possible coaching situation for next year? What we may see?
Well, you're gonna disagree with me on it, but I wouldn't mind seeing Steve Nash. And the reason why he failed in Brooklyn is out of his control. He failed because Kyrie didn't want him there. And look at now, I don't like Kyrie, and so this is kind of like going and bashing him a little bit. I'm not saying he's not talented, because he is talented,
Right.
but you can't control a team. You just can't. Like, you look at Brooklyn. Why didn't Brooklyn succeed? They had Kevin Durant, who is a first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the greatest to ever play the game, and you had solid pieces around them. And you have Kyrie Irving with his ability and his handles and everything. Why couldn't you win? The reason is because it was just drama. There was just
Right.
too much drama in Brooklyn. And that was because you had Kyrie Irving voicing out his opinion on a lot of things. And it made it so it wasn't focusing on basketball. You were focusing on everything else. You
Right.
look at Cleveland when Kyrie was there without LeBron, they sucked. And then
Mm.
LeBron came back. They won, obviously, but that's because Kyrie took the step down and allowed LeBron to take the step up. The another reason to the Brooklyn not having successes, like, Kyrie thinks he's Batman, but he's not. He is not even a Robin, honestly. He's like the Joker. He's just, there's a reason why Steve Nash didn't have success there, and it has nothing to do with him. So my point is, in saying that, I think he's a great coach and has a great basketball mind, and he's
Oh, for
young,
sure.
and there's a reason why he's in the Hall of Fame. So I would not mind him being the coach for the Pistons, but I would like to see a list of candidates before I'm going like, yeah, I want him as my coach, because I'd like to see what Weaver is actually thinking, but I wouldn't mind him as the next coach.
Also, for me, I don't get me wrong, because I was a fan of Steve Nash, in the 2009 and before, when he was on the Suns, it was Amari Stoudemire, big fan. I just don't know if he's the guy that's going to like connect with our players. I really felt like Dwayne Casey was respected on so many different levels by our guys. I just don't know if Steve Nash is that way. He might be if we like hear more press conferences from him. It's not necessarily the basketball mind I'm worried about. I think he's absolutely brilliant. I wonder if James Wiseman, Jalen Duren are really going to be able to relate and confide in him. But also on this coaching search, I really wish and hope for Troy Weaver really letting Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Jaden Ivey be involved with this process. And maybe even, when we have a local college football team here in Marquette, Michigan. It's the Northern Michigan Wildcats, and they were searching for their new head coach, who's an alumni, played for the team, and they had a couple of their captains on the searching committee for this coach. And I really loved that, because these are the guys that are going to be working with this coach every day and really on that 82 game maybe hopefully more game season. And so I would really hope that Cade, Jaden, Jalen, some of these main guys for us are involved in this process, because I think those guys, one, are wise beyond their years. I think Cade is very mature for his time and will be able to give a nice perspective. So I'm very interested to see where this goes and what this will look like throughout the NBA season, off season, because a lot is going to happen from this. And as Pistons fans, it's just something again to look forward to. This is going to be an awesome off season if you're a Pistons fan. So you guys better buckle up, because it's going to be wild, and just really enjoy the process. Enjoy the Pistons team getting better this off season, and it's all going to pay off next season. That will do it for the last Revved Up recap of the Detroit Pistons season. Tonight's final score was 81-103 in the Chicago Bulls' favor. Before you guys leave, we collabed rather with Grind Clothing Co. So you can find the link to that merch in the description below and in our YouTube bio. And make sure to go follow Grind Clothing Co. on Instagram and check out their designs also. We are very excited to partner up with them. And we have different styles for everybody's different choosings. We also have stickers, and we're going to have a summer drop coming soon for the summer season. And make sure to like and subscribe. We will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.